Okay, let's unpack this. Have you ever really stopped to consider how deeply culture can shape our understanding? Or, sometimes our profound misunderstanding of something as fundamental as autism? Today, we're diving deep. We're pulling insights from cultural stigma and autism, understanding and overcoming barriers to really equip you, our listeners, with a well-informed perspective on this really critical subject.
Yeah, and what's really striking here, I think, is how these deeply ingrained cultural beliefs, they aren't just abstract ideas floating around. They have very real, tangible consequences. They profoundly impact individuals' families,
Yeah.
really globally. So as we go through this deep dive, maybe take a moment to consider, the silent narratives around autism in your own community.
Okay, so let's start by defining this landscape a bit. When we talk about cultural stigma and autism, what are we actually dealing with? We're not just talking about individual prejudice, are we? It's more, it's about these deeply embedded societal ideas, often like born from misunderstanding. And these can lead to outright judgment, sometimes blame, or even just making autistic individuals feel, well, invisible within their communities, like this pervasive shadow.
Exactly. And if you connect that to the bigger picture, this isn't just about personal shame, though that's part of it. It's a systemic challenge. It
Yeah.
tragically prevents families from getting the support they really need. Our sources show how often families actually hide an autism diagnosis. They do it out of fear, maybe embarrassment, or sometimes because of these profound cultural misinterpretations,
Right.
attributing it to magic or blaming the parents directly.
And that hiding, it's not really a conscious choice, is it? It feels more like a reaction.
It's a response, absolutely. A deeply ingrained, almost reflexive response to, frankly, overwhelming cultural pressures.
And the immediate impact, the sort of heartbreaking ripples from that concealment.
Well, this stigma, this misunderstanding, it fosters this hidden reality. You have autistic individuals experiencing profound emotional distress, feeling like they have to hide who they are, and at the same time, their families are under immense strain, often facing unfair blame, which just cuts off the support they desperately need.
The initial emotional toll sounds staggering.
It is. Individuals grapple with deep sadness, isolation, feeling this intense pressure to just suppress their authentic selves. And families. They face heightened stress, that isolating burden of blame. It can really erode relationships within the family and block the path to getting outside help.
Okay, so let's maybe shine a light on how these societal shadows fall directly on individuals and families, starting with the personal cost for autistic people themselves, the emotional effects. They sound profound.
They really are. Stigma can lead to this pervasive sadness, especially in cultures that expect, rigid conformity. This pressure often forces individuals into what's called social camouflage. It's a strategy, basically, of deliberately masking or suppressing their autistic traits just to try and fit in.
And here's where it gets really interesting.
Yeah.
This social camouflage, while it might seem helpful for fitting in on the surface, it can actually make you feel ashamed and unhappy, right? It stops you asking for help or even trying new things.
Right, precisely. It's paradoxical. You're trying to connect, but you end up internalizing shame and disconnecting from your true self. It's this invisible, absolutely exhausting burden. It stifles self-expression, and yeah, it inhibits seeking support or exploring opportunities. We see specific examples like more depression and anxiety in places with really strong stigma, some Asian countries, for instance, because of that intense pressure to hide, just feeling tired, constantly tired from masking traits.
Wow. And that leads directly into social isolation, doesn't it? How does that play out?
It really does. Stigma directly shapes how people are seen and treated. In some cultures, these ingrained beliefs like autism being linked to, I don't know, malevolent magic or seen as family dishonor, they directly fuel rejection and bullying. This seems especially pronounced in more collectivist cultures, say in East Asia, where the emphasis on group harmony can really marginalize anyone perceived as different. The sources actually give some stark figures, something like 75% of autistic kids being left out of group activities and about 13% facing physical bullying. That makes forming friendships, participating in the community, incredibly difficult.
And this raises an important question. How does this isolation affect caregivers? Because the weight doesn't just fall on the individual.
No, absolutely not. Caregivers often bear the brunt of this stigma. It adds this huge layer of judgment and blame onto what's already a demanding role. Research clearly shows caregivers of autistic children experience significantly higher stress than parents of non-autistic kids. And that stress gets worse, when the child needs more support or faces more judgment from society. It often escalates into depression, burnout.
And self-blame, too, I imagine.
Oh, definitely. Stigma often instills self-blame, this pervasive feeling of inadequacy, and this cultural shame, the secrecy it creates. It can seriously strain family dynamics. Sometimes families might even turn to cultural or religious ways to cope, like exorcisms or special prayers, instead of seeking evidence-based medical help. Though interestingly, a study in China showed that parents with good coping skills actually felt less stigma. And open communication within the family really helped too. Mindfulness, self-care, these are vital coping tools.
Okay, so beyond the individual and the family, we start hitting these broader societal hurdles like community barriers.
Yeah, big ones. Schools, doctors,
Yeah.
often misunderstanding or just ignoring needs makes getting help incredibly hard.
And then there's intersectionality.
Yeah.
If you're autistic and part of another minority group, say LGBTQ plus dyspnea, things get even tougher.
Absolutely tougher. The stigmas can compound each other. You face amplified prejudice, greater isolation, and immense difficulty finding culturally competent support. There's this constant fear of judgment or unfair treatment being multiplied.
Which must also impact things like employment.
Hugely. Many autistic people feel they have to hide their diagnosis at work. But then they miss out on crucial accommodations and support. And sadly, that contributes directly to high rates of unemployment or underemployment in the autistic community.
What's fascinating here is how these societal barriers seem so deeply rooted in myths and stereotypes.
They are, and some of the cultural beliefs cited in our sources are quite stark. Attributing autism to witchcraft or the evil eye in some African and Saudi Arabian contexts, or just dismissing it as bad parenting. These are completely false, of course, but they spread quickly and cause immense harm. Then you have the stereotypes, often pushed by media, the autistic savant myth, or the loner trope. They paint such an incomplete, often misleading picture. And, tragically, that false link between vaccines and autism, that misinformation has taken root in places like Canada and England, too.
So these myths aren't just passive ideas, they actively fuel discrimination.
Exactly. What's fascinating here is how these stereotypes feed discrimination. It manifests as unfair treatment, specifically because someone is autistic. It happens in schools, teachers or doctors ignoring genuine concerns. It happens at work, not getting hired, or facing a hostile environment. It even happens at home sometimes, with pressure to suppress authentic autistic behaviors, like stopping stimming or forcing eye contact.
And forcing normal behaviors like stopping stimming. It's important to understand stimming isn't just a habit, right? It's often functional.
Absolutely. Vital point. Stimming is often a crucial self-regulatory tool for autistic people. It helps manage sensory input, express emotion. It serves a purpose. Trying to suppress it doesn't make someone normal. It usually just increases their anxiety and discomfort. It really highlights that disconnect between societal expectations and actual individual needs. And as you said, people with intersecting identities often face even more exclusion, more distress because the discrimination gets layered.
Okay, so given all these formidable barriers, the journey to just getting support, even a diagnosis, sounds incredibly challenging. What are some specific obstacles there?
Well, our sources point to parental fear of judgment, as we discussed.
Yeah.
And those pervasive cultural beliefs, like in some Latin American or Hispanic communities where autism might be wrongly linked to poor discipline or family issues, this often leads families to actively hide a diagnosis to avoid being ostracized. Plus, language barriers can be a huge hurdle. If you don't speak the dominant language, accessing therapy or services becomes profoundly difficult.
So what does this all mean for someone actually trying to get help?
It means stigma creates significant delays. Parents might deny the diagnosis or avoid teachers and doctors because they fear being judged or simply don't trust the system. We even see specific dynamics like immigrant fathers sometimes feeling extra pressure not to engage in caregiving, seeing their role purely as the provider.
And the consequence is missing out on crucial early support.
Exactly. Missing that window for early intervention, which can be so foundational for long-term well-being and development, it's truly tragic.
And looking beyond the individual journey, what about the systems themselves? Healthcare, education? How do they perpetuate these issues?
Well, systemic issues are definitely at play. Healthcare workers or teachers sometimes dismiss concerns, especially if they come from minority groups. We see disparities there. Black children, for instance, are often diagnosed significantly later than their white peers. There's also often a lack of specialists or just a general lack of knowledge among professionals. And in schools, autistic students are frequently excluded from regular classes, which really hinders their social and learning opportunities.
This raises an important question. How can systems become more welcoming, more genuinely supportive?
That's the crucial question. And the sources offer a key tip here. Using strength-focused language is powerful, shifting the narrative away from deficits, also ensuring professionals are culturally understanding and competent. These things can significantly lower stigma and make systems feel much more accessible and, well, truly welcoming for everyone.
Okay, but despite all these immense challenges, the sources also paint a picture of hope, right? There are global efforts, practical steps being taken to reduce stigma.
Yes, definitely. Looking globally, you see varied expressions of stigma, but the underlying pain is often quite similar, like in South Korea, where hiding the diagnosis is tied to family reputation, or Japan, with intense pressure to conform, leading people to avoid special education. In the West Bank, there's reports of strong rejection causing financial and emotional hardship. In Great Britain, parents weigh the stigma against the need for help. But then on the flip side, you see progress too. In the US, for example, advocacy has made a huge difference. Think of figures like Temple Grandin.
And here's where it gets really interesting. There are tangible ways people are fighting this stigma. What initiatives are making a difference?
There are quite a few. Educational programs, workshops for caregivers and teachers, vital support groups, policy advocacy work promoting inclusive education. But a really key initiative, led by autistic adults themselves, is the neurodiversity movement.
Ah, yes, the neurodiversity movement. Can you unpack that a bit?
Sure, it's fundamentally about reframing autism, not seeing it as a deficit or something to be cured, but as a different natural variation in human thinking, a different way of being with its own unique strengths. This movement and the empowerment it brings is truly transformative.
So it's about autistic people sharing their own stories, advocating for themselves. That helps break stereotypes.
Absolutely. Self-advocacy is incredibly powerful. And simply using positive, asset-based language words like unique, talented, instead of deficit-focused terms that alone can profoundly shift public perception.
So it's about courageously shifting the narrative and amplifying authentic voices.
Exactly. And that naturally leads into advocacy in a broader sense. Standing up for rights. That could be anything from signing petitions to working with organizations for better laws. Positive stories in the media also play a huge role in reshaping how people think. And remember that Hong Kong study. It showed that culturally matched support significantly reduced stigma for parents. That kind of tailored approach matters.
Okay, so for someone listening right now, what are some practical actions they can take?
There are definitely things everyone can do. First, just learn about autism from reliable sources. Really listen to the experiences of autistic people and their families if they choose to share. Participate in awareness events if you can. Maybe gently encourage community leaders to talk openly about autism. And fundamentally, just appreciate differences. Celebrate neurodiversity.
So if we connect this to the bigger picture, it's really about replacing fear with understanding, supporting autistic voices, building a kinder community.
Precisely. It's about fostering a more welcoming environment for every single individual, replacing that fear and misunderstanding with genuine understanding and acceptance.
Right, so our deep dive today really revealed how pervasive cultural stigma around autism is. It creates these immense challenges, the emotional toll, the systemic barriers stopping people from getting help. But crucially, it also showed there are clear, practical steps you can take. You, the listener, can be part of the solution by learning, by listening, participating, speaking up, and just celebrating differences. Your engagement, even in small ways, can genuinely help shape a world where everyone feels they belong.
And maybe that leaves us with a final thought, something to mull over. It raises an important question for all of us, I think. In what ways do our own unexamined cultural assumptions, however subtle, however well-intentioned they might seem, in what ways might they inadvertently contribute to the very stigmas we hope to overcome? Something to keep exploring, keep learning about, and keep questioning long after this deep dive ends.